They later said she was only 9, but in truth, Miriam stopped counting the moment the soldiers arrived. Childhood ends the second someone tells you your name no longer matters. The night before the roundup, her mother had whispered her full name into her ear, as if trying to tattoo it into her memory. Miriam Goldstein. Don't ever forget who you are. But memory is a fragile thing when fear presses its hand over your mouth. When they reached the transition camp, the guards shouted numbers, not names. Her mother tried to correct them just once. A slap changed her mind. After that, words became dangerous, and silence became survival. In the first days, Miriam clung to her identity like a thread between worlds. She repeated her name under her breath, afraid that letting go would mean disappearing completely. But hunger steals more than strength. Exhaustion steals more than sleep, and cruelty steals more than innocence. On the 7th day, during the chaotic morning lineup, a guard demanded her name. Her voice cracked. She hesitated. Behind her, someone whispered urgently, "Don't give them anything real." And in that instant, something inside her folded. She looked straight ahead and said nothing. The guard, irritated, assigned her a number. It didn't hurt as much as she expected. Instead, it felt like letting go of a heavy coat she couldn't carry anymore. Her mother cried that night, but silently, with her face turned toward the wall so Miriam wouldn't see. Yet Miriam heard every tremor in her breathing. She wished she could comfort her, tell her that forgetting her name didn't mean forgetting her. But children in camps learn quickly. Comfort is a luxury, and words cost too much. Slowly, she began answering only to the number sewn onto her uniform. Sometimes she even startled when someone whispered Miriam, as if it were a stranger's name. The hardest part wasn't losing it was how quickly the forgetting felt like relief. Rumors drifted through the barracks about transports, separations, selections. Each rumor carried a fragment of truth sharp enough to cut through hope. One afternoon, a woman with shaking hands braided Miriam's hair and said, "If they call your number, follow the line. Don't cry. Don't look back." Advice felt like prophecy here. Miriam nodded as if she understood what following the line meant. Children shouldn't have to understand such things, but the camp had already taught her the mathematics of survival. Minimize attention, minimize emotion, minimize memory. The day the selection finally came, the air smelled of smoke and cold metal. People moved like shadows. Mothers tried to shield their children, but Miriam's mother did something different. She knelt, held her daughter's shoulders, and whispered, "If we're separated, remember." Actually, no, don't remember. Remembering hurts. It was the closest thing to permission Miriam had ever received to let herself disappear. When the lines split and the guards pushed her forward, she felt a small hand brush hers for the last time. She didn't turn around. She couldn't. Her mother's final gift was unbearable clarity. Forgetting might be the only way to stay alive. By nightfall, Miriam no longer responded to her given name at all. It had become a sound from a world that no longer existed. The girl who entered the camp with a whispered identity was gone. In her place stood someone smaller, quieter, harder. The girl who forgot her own name because survival sometimes asks you to erase the parts of yourself that make you human. And she obeyed, because she was 9, and she wanted to live. Miriam's new life was measured in routines, not dreams. She woke when others woke, stood where she was told to stand, moved when the line moved. The number on her uniform became the shape of her existence. It did not ask who she had been. It only demanded that she keep going. In the early weeks, she still felt Miriam somewhere deep inside, like a name written on fogged glass, almost visible if she tried hard enough. But each day pressed another fingerprint across it until the letters blurred. There was one person who seemed to see through the blur, an older girl, maybe 15 or 16, with sharp eyes and a soft voice. Her name was Hannah. She had arrived earlier and understood the silent rules of the camp in a way that Miriam did not. Hannah showed her where to stand, so they would not be noticed. How to hide a crumb of bread, how to move her face into an expression that looked empty enough to avoid attention, but not so empty that it invited suspicion. "Don't react to your name," Hannah whispered one night, when a woman across the room was quietly calling the names of children she would never see again. React to footsteps, react to orders. React to chances. Names are too heavy here. It sounded cruel, but Miriam understood. Every time someone used her real name, it pulled at something fragile inside her chest. It made her remember a tablecloth with embroidered flowers, a bookshelf, the sound of her father humming on Friday nights. The more she remembered, the more unbearable the present felt. Forgetting slowly changed from betrayal into protection. Hannah began calling her simply Little One. It was not a real name, but it did not hurt. It was light enough to carry. Work details shifted often. Some days, they were ordered to carry heavy objects from one place to another. Other days, they were made to stand outside for hours, waiting for instructions that never seemed to come. The cold worked its way through her thin clothes, but what frightened Miriam most was not the temperature. It was the sense that the world had shrunk to a single narrow track. Obey, endure, repeat. Count only the things that keep you alive, Hannah told her. Don't count days. Count sips of water. Count times you manage to stay standing. Count the moments you don't give up. So Miriam stopped counting her birthdays, stopped trying to remember how old she was supposed to be. She counted the times Hannah shared part of her bread. She counted the times someone in their barrack helped another person stand. She counted the nights she fell asleep before the memories of home reached her. Each small victory became a stepping stone across an invisible river. One evening, as they shuffled back from work, a guard barked at them to move faster. Miriam stumbled, her knee buckled, and for a terrifying second she felt herself tipping forward. The world tilting, a hand shot out and grabbed her arm, steadying her before she fell. It was Hannah. She did not look at Miriam, did not say anything, but her grip was firm. That silent rescue lodged itself deep in Miriam's memory, not as a dramatic act, but as proof that she was still worth catching. Later that night, when the barrack finally quieted, Miriam tried to remember what her own voice had once sounded like when she said, "My name is Miriam." The sentence felt foreign on her tongue, even in her thoughts. It was as if she were trying to speak on behalf of a distant cousin. She tested the words silently, then let them dissolve. The effort made her chest ache. Hannah noticed her restless breathing. "What are you thinking about, little one?" she asked softly. Miriam hesitated. "I used to have a name," she whispered. "A real one. I'm afraid if I say it, everything will break." Hannah was quiet for a moment. "Then don't say it," she replied. "You don't need that name to live through tonight. You only need to wake up tomorrow." "Is it wrong to forget?" "Medium, ask it." "It's not wrong," Hannah answered. "It's a shield. One day, if there is a later, you can decide which pieces you want back. For now, keep only what keeps you breathing." Miriam lay awake for a long time after that, listening to the breathing of the others, the creak of the bunks, the distant sounds outside. She imagined her old name folded carefully and hidden somewhere safe, like a photograph in the bottom of a drawer. She could not hold it now. Her hands were too full of surviving. But maybe, if she lived long enough, she could open that drawer again. For the first time, the thought of living long enough did not feel like an impossible wish. It felt like a secret pact between her and the girl she used to be. "You disappear for now, and I will keep us alive. When it is safe, we will meet again." That night, she pressed her forehead against her knees and breathed slowly, copying the rhythm Hannah had taught her. Winter arrived without snow, only with colder air and sharper edges. The winds slipped through every crack in the barracks, turning sleep into something thin and fragile. Miriam didn't know what month it was anymore. She only knew that the days were shorter, the nights longer, and the cold felt personal, like another enemy. The older women tried to guess the date by the position of the sun, by scraps of news, by fragments of overheard conversations. But to Miriam, time had become a blur of gray. She didn't miss birthdays. She missed warmth. She missed the sound of her own laughter, though she could no longer remember exactly how it sounded. One evening, as they waited in line, a man with a notebook walked slowly along the row of prisoners. He wore round glasses and seemed different from the others, less impatient, more observant. Miriam lowered her eyes, but she could feel his gaze moving over each face. lingering a little longer on some. When he stopped in front of her, her heart started pounding so loudly she was sure he could hear it. He looked down at his notebook, then at the number on her uniform. "Number," he said flatly. "Say it." She repeated the sequence, stitched to her chest. Her voice didn't tremble anymore. Numbers were safer than names. He nodded, wrote something, then surprised her with another question. "Did you have a name before this?" The world seemed to tilt. No one had asked her that in months. The simple word before felt like opening a door Sidney nailed shut from the inside. She felt Anna, his elbow brush, lightly against hers. A warning, stay small, stay unnoticed. The man watched her closely. "Well, fid." Her throat tightened. Somewhere far away, she heard her mother's voice whispering, "Don't ever forget who you are." Then Hannah's voice layered over it. "Keep only what keeps you breathing." Miriam opened her mouth. "Yes," she said. "I did, but I don't remember it now." The answer hung in the air between them. It wasn't entirely true her. Names still flickered at the edges of her mind, like a word heard through a door. But it wasn't a lie either. She no longer remembered how it felt to belong to that name. The man stared at her for a moment, something unreadable in his expression. Then he scribbled another note and moved on. That night, lying on the hard bunk, Miriam replayed the moment again and again. "I don't remember it now." The sentence echoed in her chest. She waited for shame to swallow her. It didn't. Instead, she felt a strange, quiet calm. Saying it out loud had turned forgetting into a choice, not just something that happened to her. Hannah rode toward her, whispering, "You did well." "Was it wrong?" Miriam murmured. "It was smart," Hannah replied. "They want to know what to use against you. Don't hand them anything sharp." The days that followed were somehow both identical and different. Miriam noticed that the questions became more frequent. Men with notebooks, women with lists, people in uniforms that looked less harsh but felt no safer. They spoke of transfers, inspections, records. They demanded details, where she came from, who she had lived with, what she remembered. It felt like they were trying to rebuild the story of her life on paper, one question at a time. Sometimes she answered, sometimes she didn't. When she did speak, she learned to choose carefully. She described objects instead of people, places instead of feelings. A blue door, a cracked window, a tree outside her old school. Facts could not be used against her in the same way that longing could. One afternoon, she and Hannah were assigned to help clean a small storeroom near the administrative barracks. It was a rare task that kept them indoors for a few hours. While sweeping in silence, Miriam noticed a stack of discarded folders on a table. Papers spilled from them, lists, forms, lines of ink that tried to make sense of chaos. For a moment, curiosity outweighed fear. She took a tiny step closer and glimpsed the columns. Date of arrival, age, profession, name. Without thinking, her eyes searched for something familiar. A street? A town? One of her brother's names, her mother's. She found nothing she recognized. The realization hit her strangely. The world had become so large with loss that not even the documents of those in charge could hold all the missing. Hannah noticed and shook her head once, sharply. "Don't look too long," she whispered. "The more you reach for the past here, the more it hurts." Miriam stepped back. She realized something that startled her with its simplicity. She had once believed her name was the anchor that kept her from drifting away. Now she was surviving without it. What anchored her instead were smaller things. Hannah's steady presence, the rhythm of shared breaths in the barrack, the brief moments when someone's eyes softened instead of turning away. That night, as the others drifted into an exhausted sleep, Hannah asked quietly, "If you ever leave this place, will you want your name back?" Miriam thought for a long time before answering. "I don't know," she admitted. "I think I'll need a different one. One that doesn't remember so much." "Maybe," Hannah said thoughtfully. "Or maybe you'll need two. One for who you were, one for who you had to become." The idea settled over Miriam like a thin blanket, not warm enough to comfort, but enough to keep a little of the cold away. She closed her eyes and imagined a future self standing in front of a mirror, trying to decide which name to answer to. The child who once chased sunlight across the kitchen floor, or the girl who learned to survive by erasing herself. For the first time, the possibility of choosing felt real. Distant, but real. And the girl with no name, known only by a number and a whispered little one, silently promised herself something. If there was ever a later, she would decide for herself who she would be. Not the guards, not the lists, not the numbers. Her. Miriam's world narrowed again when the winter inspections began. Unpredictable evaluations that carried consequences no one dared name. People whispered about them in pieces. A missing person here, an unexpected transfer there. The barrack breathed differently on those nights, as if everyone were afraid the cold might carry their names to the wrong ears. Hannah warned her early. These weeks are dangerous. Speak less, notice more. Miriam followed every instruction, becoming a shadow of a shadow. Yet even silence felt risky now. The inspectors weren't just searching for weakness, they were searching for stories, fragments of identity, anything that could label someone as useful or not. One morning, before the sun lifted, the barrack door swung open, and a woman with a clipboard called out numbers. When she reached Miriam's, something inside her tightened. Hannah squeezed a hand once before letting go. "Don't look afraid," she whispered. "Fear makes people memorable." They were marched into a narrow building with peeling paint and windows covered in frost. A row of chairs lined the wall. One by one, prisoners were taken into a small office and questioned. When someone didn't return to the hallway, no one asked why. When Miriam's turn came, she stepped into a room that smelled of ink and damp wood. A single lantern cast a muted glow, and behind the desk sat a middle-aged man with tired eyes and a posture that suggested ED. Once been a teacher or a clerk, someone who had lived an ordinary life before being handed the power to decide other people's fates. He didn't look up immediately. He flipped through papers, scanning notes that had been written about her. "Number," he said at last. She spoke it clearly. Her voice didn't shake. "Age?" She hesitated. She wasn't sure anymore. For a moment, panic pricked her chest. Then she remembered Hannah's warning. Uncertainty looked like weakness. 12, she said. He nodded without checking. Profession of parents. Her heart lurched. She knew this question. Most children answered honestly at first: teacher, Dr. Taylor, without realizing that certain professions were considered more useful and others marked families for harsher treatment. "My father worked with books," she said carefully. "True, but vague." The man wrote something down. He tapped his pencil on the desk, studying her with a strange expression. "You've been observed as unusually quiet." His tone suggested this was not entirely a compliment. Miriam kept her gaze lowered. "I try not to cause trouble. Why did you claim you don't remember your name?" he asked. Her breath caught. So the man with the glasses had written that down. Her mind raced. She needed an answer that made sense, that didn't sound defiant or fragile. "Sometimes," she said slowly, "the things before this place feel like dreams. Dreams fade." He studied her for a long moment. "Do you want your name back?" The question felt too large for the room, too heavy for the thin, cold air. She didn't answer. Silence stretched between them until he finally sighed. "You're surviving," he said quietly, almost reluctantly. "That matters more than what you remember." Miriam didn't know whether he meant it as comfort or warning. When she returned to the hallway, Hannah's eyes searched her face. Miriam shook her head slightly. "No danger. No disaster, just uncertainty." Hannah relaxed a fraction. That night, lying in the dark, Miriam replayed the question again and again. "Do you want your name back?" Part of her did. The old part. The soft part. The part that still remembered the rhythm of her mother's footsteps and the lull of her father's voice. But another part, the part that was learning to read danger, to move silently, to endure, feared what remembering might cost. If she remembered too much, the ache inside her might swallow the strength she needed to keep going. Forgetting had become a shelter she could crawl into when the world pressed too hard. The next day, a small but profound shift occurred. While gathering water, Miriam overheard two older women whispering about her. They didn't mention her number. They didn't even say the little one. One of them said, "The quiet girl," a title born of observation, not paperwork. A name made of behavior, not history. It startled her with how human it sounded. How alive. That night, Miriam asked Hannah, "Do other people forget their names too?" Hannah nodded. "More than you'd think. Sometimes it's the only way to make the days bearable." "Do you remember yours?" Miriam whispered. Hannah hesitated. Then, in the faintest voice, "I do, but I keep it deep inside, where no one can take it." Miriam turned this over in her mind. Maybe forgetting wasn't the end of who she was. Maybe it was a way of holding her true name in a safer place, far from cold rooms with questions and clipboards. For the first time, she realized she hadn't truly forgotten. She had hidden the name from herself. She had protected it, not lost. Guarded as she drifted into sleep, she felt something she hadn't felt in months. A small flicker of belonging, not to a past she couldn't reach, but to a present she was learning to endure. And in that fragile sense of belonging, she sensed something else forming quietly within her. Strength, not loud, not defiant, but steady, like a name she might one day be ready to speak aloud again. Spring arrived quietly, not with warmth, but with fewer shadows on the ground. The ice melted into mud, the wind softened, and the guards shouted a little less often. It wasn't, he hoped, not yet, but it was something different from the biting cold that had ruled their world for so long. For Miriam, the shift felt like a loosening in the air, as if the world had inhaled for the first time in months. Work assignments changed with the season. One morning, Miriam and Hannah were sent to help clear debris near a fence that curved along the far edge of the camp. It was the closest Miriam had ever been to the boundary. The wires hummed faintly in the breeze, a sound that made her skin prickle. Beyond the fence lay a world that felt impossibly distant. Patches of dull grass, a dirt road, a broken wagon half buried in soil. Ordinary things made foreign by the distance between what was allowed and what was not. Hannah worked beside her, careful not to look at the guards for too long. "The world out there keeps moving," she murmured, without moving her lips. "Even when it feels like ours is frozen." Miriam nodded, though she wasn't sure she believed it. It was hard to imagine anything moving freely when every step in her own life required permission. Later that day, while carrying scraps of wood, Miriam tripped, not badly, but enough for a guard to snap his head toward her. Before he could shout, another prisoner stepped forward quietly, offering her the smallest support, a steadying hand, a quick adjustment of the fallen wood, a look that asked nothing in return. The guard lost interest. The danger passed. That moment stayed with her. Solidarity didn't announce itself here. It arrived in gestures so small they could be mistaken for shadows. A shared crust of bread, a shift in line to block someone from notice, a whispered warning, a borrowed second of strength. It was in those tiny exchanges that Miriam began to understand something she had never considered. She was not surviving alone. She belonged to an invisible network of people who had decided, in their own quiet ways, to keep one another alive. One night, as the barracks settled, Hannah reached for Miriam's hand. "If you ever leave this place," she whispered, "you'll carry these people with you, even the ones you never learned the names of." Miriam swallowed hard. "Will they remember me?" "Maybe," Hannah said. "But what matters more is whether you remember yourself." The question hit deeper now. Weeks had passed since the inspector asked if she wanted her name back. She hadn't answered him then. She still couldn't answer it fully, but she could feel something changing. Forgetting had protected her. But the version of herself that was slowly taking shape, the quiet girl, the watcher, the survivor, felt like a named, a temporary one. But hers nonetheless. The next morning, their group was marched to a different work detail, a warehouse filled with crates and dust. Sunlight filtered through high windows, illuminating floating particles like drifting stars. As Miriam lifted a lid from one of the crates, she froze. Inside were piles of objects, letters, books, children's toys, photographs, things that belonged to people who were no longer here. Hannah touched Miriam's arm, guiding her silently away. "Don't look too long," she whispered. "Some things break you in ways you don't recover from." But as they moved to another crate, a small piece of paper fluttered to the floor. Miriam hesitated, glanced at the guard, and quickly pressed her foot over it. Later, when no one was watching, she knelt and slid it into her sleeve. That night, Under the dim light of the barrack, she unfolded the fragment. It was the corner of a photograph, just a sliver of a face, the curve of a cheek, part of a smile, a child's smile. It could have belonged to anyone, and yet it made her chest tighten, as if something beneath her ribs were waking up. Hannah leaned over. "Does it remind you of home?" "I don't know," Miriam whispered. "Maybe. Or maybe it reminds me of what home is supposed to feel like." She folded the fragment again, tucking it into the seam of her uniform. It was dangerous to keep anything personal, but she couldn't let it go. It was proof that somewhere, beyond the fences and numbers and forgotten names, there had been lives filled with warmth and ordinary mornings. This passe. The photograph corner stayed hidden, a soft weight against her skin. Sometimes she touched it without thinking, as if grounding herself. It didn't bring her old name back, but it did something else, something equally important. It reminded her that she had once lived in a world where people loved and were loved. One evening, as they returned from work, Hannah whispered, "You're different these days. Stronger." Miriam didn't feel stronger, but she did feel clearer. The more she focused on surviving, the more she sensed the faint outline of the person she might become. Not the child she had been, not the number she had been forced to answer to, but someone in between, someone rising slowly from the pieces of both. A few weeks later, rumors whispered through the barrack. Something was changing. The guards looked tense. Fewer inspections. More confusion. Something was shifting in the world beyond the fences. Hannah squeezed Miriam's hand. "Whatever happens next," she said, "remember this. Your name isn't gone. It's waiting." Miriam closed her eyes and pictured the photograph fragment, the sliver of a child's smile. It wasn't her, but it stood for something she hadn't dared believe in for months. A future not promised, not clear, but possible. And for the first time since forgetting her name, Miriam held on to that possibility with both hands, not because it made her safer, but because it made her human.